Welcome back to the listening room. Some stories don't need haunted houses or ancient curses to leave a lasting impression. Sometimes all they need is a quiet country home, an unexpected visitor, a young girl with an extraordinary imagination, and one open window. Published in 1914, The Open Window by Saki is one of the greatest short stories ever written, a masterclass in atmosphere, suspense, and perfectly timed humor. So settle into your favorite chair and keep an eye on the window. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall, said a very self-possessed young lady at 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. Frampton Nuttall made what he believed to be the appropriate polite reply. In truth, he found himself wondering whether these formal visits to complete strangers would do very much to improve the nervous condition for which his doctor had prescribed complete rest. His sister, before he left for the countryside, had insisted that they would. You will bury yourself among people who know no one, she had told him, and then you'll become more nervous than ever. So she had provided him with letters of introduction to several families in the district. Without them, she declared, he would spend 6 peaceful weeks speaking only to himself. Frampton had reluctantly agreed. Yet, as he sat down in the drawing room of a house entirely unfamiliar to him, facing a composed young woman who seemed far more comfortable than he did, he questioned the wisdom of the arrangement. The room itself was pleasant enough. Large windows admitted the soft afternoon light. Books lined the shelves. Fresh flowers rested upon a polished table. The fire burned low, more decorative than necessary on such a mild October afternoon. One feature, however, immediately caught his attention. A tall French window stood wide open, looking directly across the lawn towards distant fields. It seemed an unusual choice for the season. Though the day remained pleasant, the air carried the unmistakable coolness of approaching autumn. The young lady followed his gaze. You may wonder why the window is open. Frampton smiled politely. I confess I had noticed it. My aunt keeps it open every day. Her voice remained perfectly matter of fact. Even in October, Frampton glanced again towards the open fields. I suppose she enjoys the fresh air. The young lady lowered her eyes for a moment. Then she spoke quietly. It is because of my aunt's great tragedy. The words hung quietly in the room. Frampton Nuttall immediately regretted his casual remark about fresh air. He had intended only polite conversation. Instead, he had apparently stumbled into painful territory. A tragedy? He asked gently. The young lady nodded. It happened exactly 3 years ago. She turned slightly in her chair, looking not at Frampton but out through the open window. You wouldn't know anything about it, of course. Frampton admitted that he knew almost nothing of the people living in this part of the country. His sister, who had visited the district several years before, had supplied him only with names and addresses. I wonder, he said, whether her name was ever mentioned to me. I expect it wasn't. The girl spoke with quiet certainty. It happened after your sister left. She paused, not dramatically, simply as though remembering something that remained difficult to speak about. You see that stretch of grass? She indicated the broad meadow beyond the French window, and the little path leading towards the marsh. Frampton followed her gaze. The late afternoon sunlight rested softly upon the fields. A narrow path wound through the long grass, eventually disappearing towards a cluster of trees in the distance. It was through there, she continued, that they went. My aunt's husband and her 2 younger brothers went shooting one October afternoon. They never came back. Frampton's expression changed immediately. The ground beyond the marsh had been unusually wet that year. So many places looked perfectly safe, but beneath the grass there were bogs, deep ones. They were swallowed. Her voice remained calm, matter of fact, as if she had repeated the story often enough that grief had become almost ordinary. Their bodies were never recovered. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the grass. Frampton found himself looking more carefully at the distant marshland. What had seemed peaceful only moments before now appeared strangely desolate. One can imagine the earth concealing dangerous places beneath its gentle surface. One could imagine men disappearing there, never to be seen again. My poor aunt, the girl lowered her voice. She still believes they will return. Frampton said nothing. This is why the window remains open. Every evening until it grows dark, she expects them to walk across the lawn exactly as they always did. The image settled into Frampton's imagination almost instantly. Three figures returning across the fields, stepping through the open window, as though nothing had happened. The girl continued. She always says they will be home directly. They've been out first night. They'll come in just as the sun goes down. A faint smile appeared upon the young lady's face. Not amusement, only memory. And she always mentions my uncle's white waterproof coat. He carried it over his arm. And Ronnie, one of my uncles, he always sang the same ridiculous song. Bertie, why do you bound? It annoyed Aunt terribly. She looked once more through the open window. Sometimes, on quiet evenings like this, I almost get the feeling that they really will come back. Silence settled over the room. Frampton stared toward the open countryside. The wide window no longer seemed unusual. It seemed heartbreaking. How terrible, he thought, to wait every evening for someone who would never return. He felt a deep sympathy for the woman he had not yet met. Outside, the golden afternoon was slowly giving way to evening. The shadows stretched longer across the grass. The breeze stirred the leaves. Then, footsteps sounded somewhere in the hallway. The lady of the house was coming down. Frampton straightened in his chair, careful to compose himself. He resolved not to mention the tragedy. Surely it remained too painful a subject. He could only hope, he thought, that his visit might provide the poor woman with a brief distraction from her endless waiting. My dear Vera has been amusing you? A pleasant voice interrupted the silence. Frampton rose at once. A middle-aged woman entered the room with the easy grace of someone entirely at home. She greeted him warmly, apologizing for keeping him waiting. I hope Vera has entertained you. She has been most interesting, Frampton replied. That is very good of her. Mrs. Sappleton settled comfortably into a chair near the open French window. I hope you don't mind the window remaining open. My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting. They always come in this way. Frampton felt his heart sink. Poor woman. The niece had spoken truly. Mrs. Sappleton looked cheerfully out across the lawn. They've gone to the marshes today, so they'll come home with muddy boots all over my carpets. She laughed lightly. Men never think about such things. Frampton forced a polite smile. To him, the remark carried no humor at all. It sounded like another fragment of a grief from which he had never recovered. Determined to steer the conversation towards safer subjects, Frampton began speaking about his health. My doctors insisted upon complete rest. They forbid excitement and recommend absolute avoidance of mental strain. Mrs. Sappleton listened with polite attention, or rather she appeared to. Every few moments her eyes wandered back toward the open window, toward the fields, toward the path disappearing into the gathering dusk. Frampton noticed it immediately. Each time he mentioned his treatment, his cure, or the progress of his nerves, she seemed only half aware of his words. Her attention remained fixed outside. He pitied her more than ever. How exhausting, he thought, to spend every evening waiting for the impossible, trying bravely to carry on ordinary conversation while expecting those lost faces to appear once again. He continued speaking, partly from nervousness, partly from kindness. My doctors, he explained, are not entirely in agreement regarding my diet. One recommends complete rest, another fresh air. A third insists that I avoid any violent emotional experience. Mrs. Sappleton nodded absent-mindedly. Quite so. Then, without warning, her face brightened. Oh, she exclaimed happily. Here they are at last. and just in time for tea. Frampton froze. Surely, surely she did not. His eyes followed hers, toward the open window, toward the quiet lawn beyond. At first he saw only the fading light. The fields had grown dim beneath the evening sky. The shadows had lengthened. The breeze had fallen almost completely still. Then, movement. Three figures walking slowly across the grass, exactly where Vera had pointed. A man carried a white waterproof coat over one arm. Beside him walked two younger companions. One of them hummed cheerfully. The tune drifted faintly across the evening air. Bertie, why do you bound? The words reached the room with startling clarity. Frampton's blood ran cold. Every detail, every single detail, the white coat, the three figures, the song, everything Vera had described. Exactly. The men approached the house, steadily, naturally, as though returning home after an afternoon's shooting. Their dogs bounded happily through the grass ahead of them. One of them called out cheerfully, I say, my dear, we're rather muddy, but most of it's dry. He stepped toward the open window. Everything was exactly as Vera had described. Frampton stared, unable to reconcile what he was seeing with what he had been told. Three men, lost for years, returning at twilight. Not as ghosts, not as pale apparitions, but as ordinary men, laughing together after an afternoon's shooting. The impossible had become visible, and it was walking directly towards the open window. I said, Bertie, one of the younger men called again. Why do you bound? We laughed. The same absurd little song. The very one Vera had mentioned only moments before. Frampton's carefully protected nerves, already strained by weeks of illness, gave way entirely. Without uttering a single word, he sprang from his chair. His walking stick, his hat, he seized them almost blindly. The front door stood only a few steps away. He reached it in what seemed a single movement. The hall echoed with hurried footsteps. A moment later, the front gate slammed. Then came the unmistakable sound of a man running for his life. The hunters entered through the French window exactly as they always did. Their boots were indeed muddy. Their dogs immediately began investigating the room. Mr. Stapleton laid his white waterproof coat across the nearest chair. Back at last, he announced cheerfully. We've had a decent day's shooting. He looked around the drawing room, then frowned. Where's our guest? Where's our guest? Mrs. Stapleton blinked in surprise. He was here only a second ago. He rushed out the front door the instant you appeared, without a word. He scarcely even said goodbye. Mr. Stapleton laughed. What an extraordinary fellow. Mrs. Stapleton looked genuinely puzzled. He spent the entire visit speaking about his nerves, and then he fled as though he had seen a ghost. The family exchanged confused glances. No explanation presented itself, at least not until Vera spoke. The young girl looked thoughtfully toward the still open window. Oh, she said quietly, I expect it was the dog. Everyone turned toward her. You see, he once told me he had a dreadful horror of dogs. She spoke with calm sincerity, the kind of sincerity that makes even the most unlikely story seem perfectly reasonable. Years ago, when he was traveling in India, he was chased by a pack of wild dogs. They pursued him into a cemetery. He had to spend the entire night hiding inside the newly dug grave, while the dogs snarled and growled about him until morning. She gave a sympathetic little shake of her head. No wonder the sight of a spaniel frightened him so terribly. For a brief moment the room remained silent. Then the explanation settled comfortably among the listeners. Yes, that must surely be it. An unfortunate, nervous gentleman, a dreadful experience in India, a harmless dog. It explained everything, or so it seemed. Saki ends his story with a line that has delighted readers for more than a century. Romance at short notice was her specialty. In just a few minutes, Vera had invented one convincing story, and then when circumstances demanded it, she invented another. Whether she possessed an extraordinary imagination, an irresistible love of mischief, or simply a remarkable talent for storytelling, Saki leaves for us to decide. Perhaps that is why the open window continues to feel so fresh today. It reminds us that the most believable stories are not always the truest ones. Sometimes all they require is confident, careful observation, and someone willing to believe. Thank you for joining me in the listening room. If you enjoyed this classic tale, subscribe and return next time as we open another timeless story together. Until then, keep your curiosity alive. Question what seems obvious, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing in a room isn't what's outside the window, it's the storytellers sitting beside you.